Okay, so let's start. Welcome to the new semester, and this is the first installment of our Crypto Cafe. Today Dr. Shi Bai will talk to us about Lattice algorithms, and I will meet every 2 weeks for Crypto Cafe. And I think some of you at least will be speakers as well, so we'll be discussing about this later on. But I want this to be a cooperative effort, yes, throughout the semester, okay, for everyone that is interested in crypto. So the floor is for Shi.
Thank you, everyone, for the introduction. I'm going to start the crypto seminar by introducing a computational problem which is called LWE, which is short for the learning with error problem. I'm going to give the definition quite soon. And in particular, I will look at the algorithm for solving this problem. There's no efficient algorithms so far to solve the problem. Most of the algorithms are simply exhaustive search, this kind of philosophy. But I will introduce some algorithms for solving this and focus on the lattice algorithm to solve the problem. Okay, just a very quick outline. So what are the LWE and SIS problems? So, and what are the lattices? And how to solve the LWE problem using lattices over there. So the lattice algorithms are not the only algorithm to solve the LWE and SIS problem. There are lots of other algorithms to solve the problem. So it's just one strategy. But that's what I'm going to focus on in today's talk. In particular, there are 2 steps. The first step is to apply a strategy to convert the given LWE problem into another LWE problem or into a SIS problem, which is really the dual problem of the LWE. And in the second step, we call SVP or BDD solver, which is really the computational part of the work to solve the problem. So the first part is how to convert this problem cleverly. The second step is to use a solver to solve it. Okay. And in the end, I will also try to propose some questions to see in case that's interesting. Just feel free to stop me if you have any questions or comments. Okay. All right. So the learning with error problem, it's usually presented conveniently as a metric form. So let me grab to the next picture, because that's more visually. So what we are given is we are given a matrix A, which is usually this tall matrix for the problem to be well defined. And we are also given a vector B, and then the problem is to find a potential S and E such that A times S plus E equals to B. Think about this in the cryptography sense. So somebody else will, first of all, choose some S and E, and then they will also pick up an A, so they're going to compute AS plus E, which equals to B. Equals to Q means it's each coordinate equals up to modulo Q. And then the people who created this will hide S and E, so these are regarded as the secret, and they are only going to send the purple matrix A and the purple matrix B. So that's how the problem is defined. So our task is to find S and E. Okay. And clearly there are lots of parameters. We're going to define what's the dimension of the matrix A. That's already fixed for all the dimensions for S, E, and B. But also, what are these Q? I mean, how large Q should be chosen? And that's back to my previous slides. So to define the problem, there's like a chain of parameters. But we start by choosing a security parameter, which is really like the security level we want to achieve. For example, I choose a security parameter level, which can equal to 2 to the 128, which means that there's no way to break this LWE system using time smaller than 2 to the 128 in terms of bit complexity. And once we have fixed the target security level lambda, we will choose parameters n, q, n accordingly with respect to the lambda. So you can consider n, q, n as the functions of lambda. And we're also going to choose two distributions. Okay. So here is an example. So the most common way is to sample a uniform matrix A coming from ZQ or FQ if you consider Q to be a prime of dimension n by n. And as an example parameter over here, you can choose n, which is really close to lambda, which is 128 in this example. So maybe you can choose n as a small multiple of lambda, maybe 4 times or 5 times of 128. So you're gonna have to see something like n equals to 768 or something like that. So that's just a numerical example. And you will choose Q to be n to some constant power. So you can choose Q to be n up to 3, for example. And you already have your n over here, so Q is defined over there. And you will choose your n, which is somehow similar to the n times log Q. So the dimension of n is slightly larger than the dimension n. Okay, so that helps us to fix Q, M, and N here, and therefore we can sample matrix A. So this matrix A is, remember, is an M times N matrix where each coordinate is up to Q. So, and then we're going to, as the people who create this problem, he's also going to sample S and E. Remember, S and E are his secret, so they're going to keep it secret. So the way that he's going to sample is simply sample S according to certain distribution. So as an example here, the distribution could be uniform. The distribution of S could be simply uniform on like Q to the N. Take the simple to consider is a uniform distribution where each coordinate is uniformly sampled from Q. But for E, there is a very important restriction, which is that for the problem to be well defined, you're going to have to make E to be small. So that's the most important constraint in the LWE problem. For example, a tradition is the most canonical way is to choose E, where each coordinate is coming from a discrete Gaussian, where with some deviation, which is about that size. Okay. Alpha Q about 2 times square, where alpha Q is the standard deviation. So compared to Q itself, if you look at this example parameter, Q, as I mentioned, could be n to the 3, for example, while the standard deviation, which is alpha times Q, which is about 2 to the square root of n. So this thing is, so 2 times square root of n is much smaller than n to the 3, for example. So if we came back to the matrix form, so we sample uniform A, we sample uniform S, and then we sample a relatively small E, and then compute B. So that's how we define the problem. So I think the only important fact is for the problem to be well defined, E has to be small. That's the only kind of deal. Okay, so there are 2 versions of the LWE problem, or learning with error problem. So the first problem is called the search version. So we are given the purple matrix and the vector B, A and B, find S or E. So that's the first version. And the second version is given A and B to decide whether they are coming from LWE samples or they are truly uniformly random samples. There's a caveat here because A and B, if we generate it in the LWE way, then we can prove that there is not enough entropy to make sure that's truly uniformly sampled. But let's focus only on the search version. So if we look at this problem, if we ignore E over here, the problem is really easy because that's simply a system of linear equations without any error, right? So you have AS equals to B, it's overdetermined, so you can solve it quickly. So if there is no E at all, so if E is 0, you are only given A times S equals B, you have more equations than the unknowns, which is determined by the number N over there. So M is larger than N. It's complex. So that's an easy problem. So the hardness really comes from by adding more noise to this linear equations, and that makes solving this equation to be way much harder. So that's why I put it here. So this is equivalent to solve a system of noisy linear equations. So there are n noisy linear equations, and it's hard to solve this problem. There's no efficient algorithm to solve this. Okay. Are there any questions so far? Okay. Yes.
If the S was on the other side,
yes.
so you will have a not n-dimensional S, but m-dimensional S.
That's a good question because I'm going to have that version in the next slide.
Okay.
That's a very good question. That's the dual version of the problem.
That's a much harder problem, even if e is equal to 0. I mean, we do an integer.
Yes, so you're right. So that problem is way much harder, such that we don't even need to use e at all. So we can simply remove e to make the problem to become harder. So that problem is a sphere just mentioned is called ISS problem, or short integer solution, a homogeneous version of short integer solution problem, for short ISS. Well, this is equivalent to what Spirit said by multiplying from the other side, but I didn't transpose here. Well, if you only have, if you consider B, matrix B here, if it only has one row here where n equals to 1, then that's the famous knapsack problem up to modulo P, right? You have a row vector multiply a column vector which gives you an integer. That's a knapsack problem, as long as your E is restricted to be 0, 1 maybe. So this problem is simply a vector version of the modular knapsack. Okay. So this problem is by itself it's already hard, so we don't even have to add an error E. But I exchange the position of S and E here, or the notation here, simply because that's more convenient for me to introduce the algorithm. And this problem, if we go back, is called, it's written in the matrix form, ISS. So the problem is defined in a very similar way. We sample a matrix B, and then we sample a very small vector E according to certain distribution. Could be a discrete Gaussian. And then the people who created this will compute B times the secret E, and they will review B and T and ask me to solve E. So that's E. Other problem. So these two problems are due to each other. So the reason why I introduced them because remember that I'm going to talk about strategies for solving this problem. So sometimes it's more efficient if I convert this into the other problem and solve the other problem instead. So that's why I'm introducing both of these. Okay, so far I have only introduced the LWE problem and its kind of sibling problem, which is called ISS. I haven't talked about Lattice at all. So before we do that, let's consider a naive algorithm to solve the cis problem. Well, you can do the same thing for the LWE problem. So how do we solve this problem by exhaustive search? Just think that if E, every entry of E are binary, so they are 0, 1, they are really tiny. So we can simply exhaustively search all of them. So one of them is going to be correct. So that takes time to do the n trials by enumerating all the possibilities on E. That already is an exhaustive search algorithm. Actually, the best algorithm for solving the cis using whatever technique we have so far takes time to do the big O of n. So it's sort of close to that, depending on the relation between m and n. So if m is like n times log q, it could be slightly larger than that. So this brute force algorithm gave 2 to the n log n. The best algorithm gave 2 to the big O n. That's somehow close enough. Okay. So the takeoff is this problem seems to be hard, at least for the moment. So we don't have any algorithm better than this to solve. All right. Okay, I'll give some variants of LWE. That was in my that was the title of my talk because the LWE problem, when used in cryptography, has different variants, and these variants determines their difficulty. So So not all the variants are equivalent. Sometimes are easy, while some versions are harder. So the canonical version, which I described before, where the S is uniform and E sample from discrete Gaussian is believed to be hard. But there are lots of variants. So the very first version as uniform is small, but not too small, but not tiny. That's I referred it to as the standard version of canonical version. There's also a Hermite normal form version, which is second, which says that okay, my S can also be small. So in fact, S follows the same distribution as my error E. So that's one variant, which is sort of standard. Okay. So one of the interesting version, which I put here as variant 1, which is called the binary error. So error denotes for E. So binary error LWE, which says E is essentially a binary, and S is uniform. Well, people are interested in this variant because the binary error helps us to reduce the error propagation when we are doing the homomorphic encryption or arithmetic. So people use this variant 1 in homomorphic encryption. That's why people are interested to look at the security for this. And there is a second variant where both S and E are small. So of course, it enjoys the same benefits of variant 1, but it also has some other benefits where S is small. So you can construct certain protocol more efficiently, for example, signature. The people then realize that if E is tiny, for example, if E is a binary vector, if you expose too much samples, so if the M is too large, then the system is not safe anymore. So in order to solve this problem, so people try to make E slightly larger. So small means it's larger than tiny, but still keep S to be tiny. This was also driven by certain applications where if M has to be large. And you also have other variants. You can restrict the number of samples given. So the standard assumption in this LWE is you can ask for as much M as you want. But there are also some variants which say, okay, you only have such a number of samples, so the M is fixed. And there are also variants where the modulus Q is large. So the combination of these distributions and number of samples makes the concrete security analysis for this problem to be pretty hard. So that's why I'm looking at this problem. So the general, I mentioned that the algorithm for solving LWE, there are several categories. So the Lattice algorithm, I put it belonging to the geometric class. It first of all frees the LWE solution of the secret S and E into some lattice problem. So this secret S and E are embedded as for example, as the shortest vector in a lattice. And then I will solve this lattice problem using certain lattice solvers. So that's one way. Of course, there are other ways like the combinatorial attacks, similar to what I just mentioned. That you can do the brute force search by trying all the 2 to the n solutions. So that's one sort of combinatorial attack. There's also algebraic attacks, which works efficiently in the case where the error is tiny. And that's specific for that situation. Okay. And there are some more attacks for structured LWE problem, which I won't cover in this course, in this seminar. So I will only focus on LWE general lattices, which is defined mod Q. So it's an over lattices mod Q. Okay. Just a very quick summary of the current status. Well, to my knowledge, this is the current state of art of algorithm for solving this variance of LWE. So for example, for the first variant where I mentioned the error could be very tiny, so it's a binary error learning with error problem. Then with these algebraic attacks, which works most efficiently for the case where you have small error, then you immediately get a polynomial time algorithm if the number of samples, which means your matrix, which is the number of rows in your matrix, is more than n squared. It's a big O n squared. Okay, so this immediately gives us a polynomial time algorithm. Okay. However, the situation changes if you restrict the number of samples. If the number of samples is slightly smaller than O of n squared, we don't have a polynomial time algorithm. Instead, we have substantial time algorithm. The techniques they use is to generate new samples from these many samples, such that we have enough number of samples. However, the quality of these new samples are reduced. That's why the running time cannot be polynomial anymore as the first case. So you sacrifice your quality by generating more samples from the old samples. So there are some dependency among these new samples. Okay. And in general, if you just assume that M is very close to N, but still slightly larger for this problem to be well defined, then there's a reduction to the problem is called FMAP with some parameters. So I won't talk about this. That's some reduction results. Okay, so that's the status for the binary error LWE. It looks scary because if I allow more samples than quadratic, then the problem becomes either the polynomial time. So then we are trying to, let's say, okay, we can increase the error a little bit, maybe more than binary, to see what's the current status, current state of R. So in fact, there's an interpolation in terms using this algebraic attacks. You have 2 to the alpha squared q squared attacks. Remember, alpha q is about the square root of n in the standard form. So let me go here. If you choose the parameters, alpha q is about square root of n as the last line. So this attacks does not work for standard parameter, but it works for alpha q being smaller than square root of n, so you have something substantial already. And for standard error LWE, this algebraic attacks even takes like super exponential time, 2 to the n, the actual log n time. So this is already slower than some other algorithms, which means that given an LWE problem, there are some experience to understand maybe which algorithm works better, but in general, there's no magic, there's no single magic algorithm which gives the most efficient attack. So we have to try several algorithms and compare their performance. Okay, so the combinatoric algorithm, for the standard, maybe I will cover for the standard case, it's still 2 to the big O n, and for the binary secret and error LWE, it works in subexponential, slight subexponential time with n samples. So I think this is the where the combinatoric algorithm is most interesting. Okay, so I just jump this. So these two are the other two categories. Today I'm going to focus on the geometric algorithm and in particular the lattice reduction algorithms. So the lattice reduction algorithm has the properties that asymptotically is the worst among the others in some sense, because no matter how you change your secret or no matter how you change your error, you always get a full exponential running time algorithm. So we don't really have the asymptotic benefit at all of using this lattice attacks for all the variants of LWE. So therefore, these lattice algorithms are mostly relevant in terms of concrete security levels. The reason is all of this security estimation takes the big O into consideration. So maybe you will have a substantial algorithm, for example, 2 to the n over log n. But in practice, the parameter we are interested in is not big enough to make sure that this is smaller than the 2 to the order n. So that's the main reason why we are interested in this. So in particular, in practice, the n is no more than 1,000, for example. Then this lattice reduction algorithm because most interested in this case. That's the purpose of this lattice reduction algorithm. Okay, so we have introduced LWE problem, and then let me give a very quick overview of lattice. A lattice is simply a linear combination. It's the same as the span, except that it's an integral linear span. So you restrict your coefficients of spanning to be a z. For convenience, I also require that the b, each of the vector bj or bi over here is an integer vector. This is not necessary, but just for convenience. So given n vectors, b1 to bn, so the lattice formed by them is the integral linear span of these vectors. So already from this definition, you can see it's a discrete kind of thing. And I will write vectors b1 to bn in the matrix form B, and I will call this matrix B as the basis matrix of this lattice L. Okay. So you can also write this as a matrix multiplication form by multiplying B times X, where X denotes the coefficients that over here. It's simply a linear combination. So the volume of the lattice is defined to be the up to the size, the determinant of this basis matrix, which is independent choice of the basis. So these are take as facts. And then here is an example of a two-dimensional lattice. You look at the picture, I start with one vector over here, and I start with the other vector, and then I compute their integral linear span. Then I got all the green dot points over here of the space. So all the green dot points form a lattice generated by these two basis vectors. Okay. And the important invariant in the lattice is so-called the lattice minimum. So it's the smallest, it denotes the smallest vector which is in the lattice, non-zero vector in the lattice. So maybe on this graph it's this one. That's the length of the, this one. Okay. All right. So with that defined, so the most important computational problem on a lattice in terms of cryptography sense is so-called the shorted vector problem. So you are given a basis B, as you with full plus from that n times n. So you are given a matrix. So the target is to output a lattice vector in the lattice generated by this B, which is shorted. So we want to. So in the previous graph, we simply want to find this vector over here. So that's our target. So the difficulty mainly depends on two things. The first one is natural, which is the dimension of the object. So if the n becomes larger and larger, then the problem is harder to solve. But that's not necessary because if you just generate a matrix B where each coordinate is uniform, maybe up to some bound, then it's very easy actually to find the shortest vector of that basis. So that's not the hardest case, or that's not the bad case for people to solve. So the difficulty mainly depends on the shape of the input basis B. So in cryptography, usually a bad B is given. So the picture we have here is have instead of a good basis. So I'm giving this one and this one as B over there. Then it's very easy to see that this is the shortest vector. But in cryptography, we are not giving this form. Instead, we are giving these two vectors. So we are giving the red one and the blue one. Although these two, I claim that, well, visually, you can see that there's no other lattice point within the space within these two lines or two vectors. So maybe they generate the same lattice. So I guarantee that these two bases, this one and this one, generate the same green points. But this is the shape of a bad basis, together with the fact that in practice we use the dimension to be something like 1,000. So that's where the difficulty mainly come from. Okay. So the purpose of a lattice reduction algorithm is that given this basis, we convert this basis back into this form. So that's kind of motivation of what we are doing there. All right. In cryptography, we usually have to solve a relaxed version of the shortest vector problem. So the shortest vector problem is to find the exact shortest vector. But in cryptography, I mean, we can't use that to construct crypto protocol because that's too strong. So in actual construction, we need a relaxed version which is defined as SVP gamma problem, where gamma is larger or equal than 1. Which means we are not finding the shortest vector, but it is sufficient to find out any vector which is gamma times the length of the shortest vector. So we are relaxed a little bit. And the running time of the best lattice reduction algorithm is in relation with this parameter gamma, of course. If your gamma is 1, that's the exact shortest vector problem. The first one, you have 2 hours to solve this, but then the running time is full exponential, here later. But if you allow your gamma to be slightly larger, you have even polynomial type algorithm. For example, if you allow your gamma to be exponential in n, so if you have an exponential approximation factor gamma, then you immediately have a polynomial type algorithm. But cryptography needs to prevent this, therefore they set gamma usually in polynomial and even in sub-exponential. And in this regime, we don't have the polynomial type algorithm to solve this SVP gamma problem. Okay. In particular, when gamma is polynomial, there's no polynomial type to solve this problem. Similar to the SVP1 case. Okay, so as I mentioned, that the best algorithm to solving the exact version, which is the SVP problem, there are 2 classes of algorithms. The first one is called enumeration, the second one is called sieving. They have different asymptotic running times. The first one is 2 to the n log n, the second one is 2 to the big O n. So in practice, people found different situation. The enumeration runs usually faster than sieving. Maybe that's also because the constant hidden between these 2 symbols. Okay. And the best algorithm to solve the relaxed version usually use this SVP1 oracles inside them. So these 2 algorithms are somehow reciprocal to each other. Okay.
What do you mean by reciprocal?
Because so the algorithm, so we have 2 solvers. The first one is SVP1, second one is SVP gamma. So in SVP gamma, we're going to use SVP1, but in smaller dimensions. On the other hand, to solve SVP1, we're going to use SVP gamma for preprocessing. So we use one each other, so it's kind of recursive. And there are 2 related problems that we're going to use later. The first one is called unique SVP gamma, and the second one is called BDD gamma. But I'm not going to describe the detailed definition because there are lots of definitions already. I would like just maybe summarize that. We will simply assume that these 2 problems, the first one is called the unique SVP with parameter gamma, and second, the BD gamma, they are no harder than SVP gamma problem that I introduced before. Okay. Remember, the SVP gamma problem is to find the lattice vector whose length is up to gamma times the length of the shortest vector in the lattice. Okay. So whenever we see these 2 problems in today's talk, let's just assume that they are no harder than SVP gamma. So if we can solve SVP gamma, we can solve them. Okay, so far we introduced the LWE. We introduced what is lattices, but we haven't seen how to convert the LWE problem into a lattice problem. So here are 2 ways to form lattices. So let's look at the matrix A in the definition of LWE. Remember, this is the top matrix. So we're going to define a lattice in the following way. So given the matrix A over here and the prime Q, this is the modulus, we're going to define a lattice Y such that Y equals to A times X for all the X coming from the Z to the N. So it's all the linear. So you can consider this as the column space of A up to mod Q. So that's so that's why the first lattice, this one, is usually referred as the image or column lattice. And you can check that that's indeed a lattice. For the second problem, this short integer solution problem, we are giving a kind of this kind of a fat matrix. And for this one, I'm going to define a lattice based on the kernel of this B, mod Q. So the lattice consists of set all the vectors E such that the B times E is 0 mod Q. Okay, that's, and there are some relations between these two lattices. And in particular, if you take the dual of this lattice up to constant Q, it's the other one. And we won't use that. Okay, and then lattice algorithm for solving this. There are many strategies to solve this LWE problem using through lattices, and they are not really equivalent to each other. So sometimes they are equivalent, sometimes they are not, depending on the parameters. So it's messy in some sense. So the general strategy is given the original LWE problems, maybe we can convert this original problem, LWE problem, into another LWE problem, which I call LWE prime, and then solve this new LWE problem using some kind of solvers that we described before. So alternatively, we can convert this LWE into a cis problem, which was the other problem I mentioned before, and then solve this cis problem using the lattice solver. But also, of course, we can just solve this LWE problem directly using the lattice solver. So there are at least 3 strategies that we can consider. So I will just throw away this road and throw away this road for now, and just consider how to solve this directly. So given the LWE problem, we can directly solve for the problem by considering the relation that AS is approximately equals to B. So the equation we have is AS is B, is B equals to AS plus E, and then mod Q. So for the problem to be well defined, this E has to be small. So that's why I'm saying, so B is approximately equals to AS, but up to Q. So essentially, B is approximately to AS plus Z times Q, where that is some integer vector. Yeah. So that's what I mean by that here. So it mainly uses the property that E is small, then the lattice generated by this A mod Q is close to B. Okay. So I will consider the image lattice, which is Y equals to AX mod Q. So that's exactly what I write on the right-hand side. So AX plus a vector times Q. So B is some point in the span of this, in the linear span of this vector of this A, which is close to a lattice point up to the distance of E. Okay. So, and then I will try to solve for this. I will try to, given this point, target point B, I will try to find its closest vector point because the distances are small. That's how we define the BDD problem, which essentially says we want to find out the closest the lattice vector. So by doing some computations, the lattice has certain runtime volume. These are not really two important. So the concrete security depends on the number of samples and given if we do the computation. For best asymptotics, we have to take m approximately equals to this. If we don't have enough samples m, then there is another way to bypass this problem. Okay. But for this attack to work, the best is about the log Q over log R. So it depends on whether the application gives you so many samples. So the asymptotic running time can be expressed by this. So if we plug in Q to be polynomial in N, and alpha also polynomial in N, alpha is kind of inverse polynomial, but that's okay. Then if we simplify this equation, we essentially got a full exponential running time algorithm. So that's open. And to solve this BDD problem, so we're going to use a technique which is called the convex embedding. So B is AS plus E plus CQ, where I have that over there. So B is close to the lattice point AS plus CQ, where E is small sheet. So I will take L to be the basis of this lattice, which forms this lattice, and then construct another lattice basis with an actual dimension. And I put a 1 over here. Then if we multiply L prime into the vector where the star denotes the coefficients of the closest vector to B, which is on top of the basis of this lattice, then if we multiply that, then we eventually recover B minus B minus AS, which essentially give me E mod Q. So that's how we construct this embedding. But I think the takeoff is there's a general technique to convert this BD problem into a unique SVP problem. So we can use the unique SVP solver to solve this problem. Okay. Well, that was the most standard technique to solve this directly. A variant of this strategy is to go through the sixth problem. So we start with an LWE problem, AS plus E, but I'm going to multiply the left kernel of this matrix A and cancel this AS part out. So I don't have anything on over here. What I left over is the A kernel times E equals to A kernel times B. So the right-hand side is A kernel times B. So the right-hand side means when I define the problem. And the left-hand side, to start with, is A kernel times E over here. So if you treat this as another A times some secret vector E equals to another B prime, that's essentially a sixth problem. So it converts the LWE problem into a six-line problem. So in general, we want to solve the sixth problem with the following form, where the B denotes A kernel and T denotes A kernel times B. So as long as we can find E, then we can substitute E back and to solve S. Then maybe one extra remark is that in practice, the LWE problem is defined in the way that S and E are unique. So if you find out short enough E, then you will recover S. Okay, so the way to solve these six problems is very similar to what we described before. So first of all, we're going to find the Y, not necessarily short. So this is an easy problem because we can simply solve the system linear equations. The caveat is we don't need a short solution, so this can be done very efficiently. And then we will consider the kernel lattice, which are all the kernels X, such that Bx is 0 mod Q. Okay, and then I will take this Y as the target point, and then compute the closest vector closest vector problem in the kernel lattice defined by this one. Okay, this will give me a vector v, where this vector v lies in essentially lies in this x, which is closest to 1. And then I will compute bv minus by, because I know that v is closest to 1, which is short. I hope that's e, so which equals to be, which equals to t, not q. So we can solve the e. And we can also do some computation to came up with the volume. Okay, so that's the second strategy. I don't want to get everyone bothered, but there's a third strategy, which is to again solve the cis problem, but using another way. Okay, and this way somehow works better than the previous way. In particular, if the number of samples given are small. So instead of canceling the A, well, you can consider this way from an information theoretical point of view. You're throwing some information away because you completely throw S away. You don't have any S. And there's another way to construct the cis and maintain the information, which is you combine A and the identity matrix, so you form an AI and times S and E. So in this way, you have a longer matrix. But on the other hand, you keep all the information on S, and you also keep all the information on E. So the new problem is again cis is it's a longer matrix A prime times a longer secret S prime equals my original target B. Okay. So well, we can as well compute the volume. If S and E are not balanced, you can also, there's some technique to also rebalance the lattice. So this method compared to the previous method has the benefits that it can somehow increase the lattice dimension. So the previous case, the lattice has dimension m. So if you don't have enough samples, because the number of samples m, if you don't have enough samples, maybe this algorithm does not work good. But then you can increase the lattice dimension by using this method, because now your new dimension is m plus n, and that helps you solve the problem faster. All right, and there is a fourth strategy, but I don't think I'm going to introduce that. I just skip that. And there's a hybrid strategy. I think that's two. Just skip this. Okay, so maybe I will speak something about the how the SVP solvers. So previously, I only talked about the strategies, how to convert an LWE problem into another LWE problem, and how to convert this LWE into a cis problem. And then I will call a unique SVP solver, and I assume that solving unique SVP is no harder than solving SVP gamma. So we assume that there exists a solver, and indeed there are some solvers to compute this SVP gamma problem. So, and this is a short summarize of the solvers we have. So to solve this approximate SVP gamma problem, where gamma is n log beta over beta, where beta is reflected from the algorithm for solving them. So it's a parameter to the algorithm. So we can call an algorithm which is called the BKZ algorithm, as I introduced before, with the parameter beta. So the main reason why I want to put this beta into gamma because the beta reflects the running time. Because the running time of this algorithm is 2 to the c times beta. I don't think this concrete value is important, but just consider if my beta is larger, then the running time of this algorithm is larger. But on the other hand, if you look at this log beta over beta is a decreasing function. So the approximation factor I can solve using a larger time, it also becomes smaller, which essentially says that if you spend more time, you can solve a better approximate SVP problem where gamma is smaller. And if you take the limit, if you take a beta, over here, approximately equals to theta of n, and you plug in that here, essentially that's the exponential of log of n. So that's polynomial in n, which means if you spend exponential running time, then you can solve the you can solve an SVP gamma problem with the polynomial approximation factor. Okay, so that's kind of a trade-off between quality and the running time. And here's how it runs. I'm not going to introduce this, but I will just give a very quick overview of how does a BKZ algorithm works. This is also relevant to the question of spheres just now, where the relation between the SVP1 and SVP gamma are reciprocal to each other. So to call a BKZ a beta algorithm, essentially we are going to solve SVP1, which is exact SVP, in dimension beta, and we're going to solve for SVP beta on each block of set beta, and then shift it to the next indices. And also for the tail part of the lattices, because we don't have enough beta entries, we will just solve how much ever we can solve. So that's how the algorithm works. At each step, we are finding a shortest vector at the dimension beta in a much bigger lattice, in a dimension n lattices. But this helps us to essentially smooth out the lattice by bringing these shorter vectors to the front. That's how the algorithm works. Maybe I will finish the talk by just giving a numerical example of how it works. And that's my last topic, I believe. So I have a lattice of dimension 100 over here, and then I will run BKZ 40, which means that from 0 to 39, I'm going to find the shortest vector and then put the shortest vector at position 0. And then I will move to 1 to 40 and find the shortest vector at 1 and move it to the next block. So after I finish all this SVP 40, I'm going to start from the beginning and do it again. So that's called one tour. So if you look at the first vector, it essentially smooths down the vectors. These are the Gram-Schmidt length of the vectors. So if you look at this one, so that's after one tour, it makes it more balanced and move the shorter vector in the front. Of course, the determinant of the lattice has to be fixed, so the later part of the lattice has to be bumped up. And another tour, another tour, another tour. Eventually, the front part is stable because it may already find the shortest vector that this BKZ beta can. It does not find anything shorter than that. So another tour, and then it will stop at some point. That in the sense that it will not find anything shorter in the very first stage. Okay. And I have a few slides of quantifying the quality, but I will just skip this and mentioning some questions. So some questions that I'm interested to look at is whether we can use a hybrid of lattice reduction and combinatorial attack to attack this LWE problem. Another topic which is relevant to the BKZ algorithm is that the running time of this algorithm are not really analyzed in a very precise way. So it might be interesting to do this. And whether there exists some better algorithms for the BKZ reduction. So the previous strategy, if you consider that, it's kind of very simple because it just shift one position every time. So maybe there are some other ways to jump several positions to do this in a special way. And how to better use the algebraic structure in lattice reduction for LWE problem with structure. So this I didn't really have time to talk today. So I think that's pretty much all. So thank you very much for the attention.
questions for Shi right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm asking about the example BKZ40.
Yes.
How do you know when to stop the algorithm?
That's a good question. So there is some theoretic work which studies after you finish a polynomial number of truths, then you are guaranteed with some quality on your first vectors. And so people usually stop after that bound because we cannot improve the quality at that point. So the quality is converging after that.
Any more questions? No? John?
Yes.
In some strategy, you say that you use BDD solver to solve the problem.
Yes.
So, but actually we don't have BDD solver, right?
Yeah, so you convert that into, well, you can solve BDD directly, but yeah, but here I just said we can solve the BDD, we can convert BDD into a unique activity problem and then solve the unique activity problem.
Okay.
You can also solve the BDD problem directly by using enumeration, but incomplete. But at least this gives you one way to solve. You can turn the BDD problem into another problem that we know how to solve it.
So I also have one problem. How can you construct this matrix? L is a matrix, and then you say LB 0 and 1. How can it become a matrix again? I don't understand this.
Oh, so this is the matrix. This is 0. This is vector. This is entry 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, it may not be very big, but these are bold fonts.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I guess we haven't had a chance to talk, which is really.
Yeah, we talked several times.
But I would like to make a quick comment.
Yeah, sure.
So this is from the work of Huck, who was my PhD.
Oh, okay.
That's why
Okay.
I say row vector.
We found, so no matter which variant of basic reduction we use,
Okay.
let's say BKZ or
Okay.
standard if you there is actually suppose you take a random permutation and you apply it to the columns.
Okay.
Let's suppose that the lattice basis is in terms of columns. Let's say you apply a random permutation of the columns. Now you do an LQ, let's say, or BKZ, and you find that the result, you get a short vector, perhaps, something. But what the result is going to be, there's a variance, and quite significant variance, as you do this over a random set of permutations or a set.
Okay. Yeah.
So this suggests perhaps you can do some kind of optimization. You begin with a sample, and this lends itself nicely to parallel computation. You take a sample of permutations, you apply them to the basis, you look at the best result perhaps, and you move this now becomes the center of your sphere for the next sample. So you take permutations of a certain distance. And you keep going like that. That may be one idea, and it turns out that it works well. And we have some results from this, of course.
Okay. That's interesting. So
I'll talk to you about this.
So what you are commenting is I mean, not all the bases have the same difficulty in some sense, right? So some bases may be easier to solve than the other bases.
Right. So
yeah.
You mean what's the complexity, or no? I mean.
So what you are saying is some bases, if you do a permutation, maybe some new bases will be easier to solve than the original one.
Right.
I think that makes perfect sense.
I don't know exactly what basis. I mean, we didn't look at. That's something we could be looking at.
Okay. Yeah.
But we looked at modular bases. It seemed to be working well. And some of these challenge.
Yeah, you use that algorithm to solve the
right.
I do Lattice challenge.
Yes, and we got really we got place. And this, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about this.
Okay.
Because It's a beautiful, some beautiful ideas.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Okay, so let's thank Shi again.